Hi, this is Amy Kenyon with Nurses Against Mandatory Vaccines. Today we're going to talk about the Michigan class action lawsuit. Today is January 25th, 2014. As most of you know, in the state of Michigan recently, a class action lawsuit was filed on behalf of Nurse Karen Bashista. In 2011, Nurse Bashista's employer mandated that she have a flu shot. She refused and her employment was terminated at that time. Karen is still an actively registered nurse in the state of Michigan. She has been since 1972, and also, according to her LinkedIn profile, she is still actively practicing as a case manager. The lawyer for this case is James Leonard Ellsman. He's based just outside of Detroit, and he's a lawyer who's actually filed the lawsuit on behalf of Nurse Bashista and anyone else who's going to be joining in on the class action lawsuit. One of the first things that we noticed about this is that Karen Bashista implies that she had a contract with her employer. Michigan has at-will employment, so unfortunately there are no contracts for employment. Even if you've signed a statement, stating that you can work there a certain time, the true law states that your employer can fire you at any time for any reason, or that you can end the employment relationship yourself if you so chose. There just is simply no contracts for employment here. So even though she really did her job well, received commendations, she really can't claim that she had a contract because Michigan is an at-will employer, and I'm sure she signed paperwork to that. Furthermore, they talk about the fact that the state health departments, the U.S. government, and the Michigan Department of Community Health have mandated the flu vaccines. This also is simply not true. The individual hospital and healthcare systems are the ones who have implemented these policies. According to the CDC's website, as you can see, no hospital employee in the state of Michigan is legally required to have the influenza vaccine. The hospitals, the medical centers, they are all making this mandatory so that they don't lose the 2% Medicare or Medicaid funding that is now required to be reported. The use of Obamacare in this is pretty unprofessional. It really should have been termed Affordable Care Act. Also, the law began in 2013, not in 2015, so this is currently happening right now. They discussed the Nuremberg policy, and I wish they would have went into a little bit more detail with this, because the Nuremberg policy is what protects us from human experimentation and things like that. It's been suggested that flu vaccines are an experimental vaccine. They talk about the CDC and their claims that the flu shots have the adverse effects, but if they would have just went straight to the flu manufacturers' inserts themselves, they could have saved themselves a lot of trouble. The more factual information presented, such as a flu vaccine insert, the better that they're going to be able to get their point across in this lawsuit. One thing that they talked about was the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. This is pretty exciting stuff because in the state of Michigan, it is absolutely illegal for your employer to fire you based on your religious beliefs, which is what Nurse Bashista is claiming here as to the reason for her termination is that her religious rights were violated. So in the state of Michigan, the use of the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act is a very good argument for this case being very sound. Failure to accommodate Michigan and federal handicappers, we're not quite sure where this came from, what it's for, or anything like that, because Nurse Bashista does not claim to be handicapped in her lawsuit anywhere. Lack of informed consent. This is also pretty exciting because doctors are required to tell patients why they're having a certain medical procedure done. The patient has the right to refuse under informed consent. They also have the right to receive alternative and different types of medical treatment if they so choose. There are therapeutic alternatives to the flu shot, and nurses also are patients, and they have the right to informed consent. So it was pretty interesting to see that this was used as an argument in this lawsuit. This is a letter from the EEOC stating that an employee does not have to show a signed letter from her pastor or religious leader. Ms. Bashista did that and was still denied her religious rights. So that was kind of an interesting protocol that we saw during reading all of this. So Nurses Against Mandatory Vaccines is very excited about this lawsuit because it's finally bringing everything to the forefront about what can and may happen if these are pushed forward. Right now, we're just going to hold our breath and we're going to see what happens.